Dunn's, the store for quality menswear, would like to have a word with you. Gentlemen, the good word is sale. And Dunn's is having a big one. Shirts and ties, suits, sport coats, and much more. Hurry to the giant sale at Dunn's.
Good morning. For more than 13 weeks, the public has been held hostage because of the fight between a neophyte transit union and the messy handling of the bus strike lockout by the government of Victoria. At last, it seems something is going to happen. And to tell us about it, here is Eli Sopow, one of our reporters in Victoria. Eli, just tell me chapter and verse what's going to happen in the legislature this morning.
Around 10 o'clock, the House will resume. What we're going to have is Labour Minister Bob McClelland, probably 15 minutes after 10 or so, introduce a bill ending the transit strike. Very likely, they will not make transit an essential service for a variety of reasons. Most likely, what they're going to do is impose some kind of a settlement. Then, very likely, tell both parties, listen, if you don't like this settlement, you get together, work out your own settlement. If you could agree on something, then you could change the terms of the one we laid down for you.
But in the meantime, it will be back to work at the earliest possible moment. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's the number one criteria, is go back to work.
Well, there are two options here. There could be a back-to-work order by the government based on the contract, on the old contract, correct?
That's right.
Or there could be a back-to-work order with new conditions in it, correct?
That's right. Or even possibly a third option. They could simply take the Morris report and said, okay, you guys, eat this, and just overlap that report on both parties.
Now, the NDP has a new leader. His name kind of escapes me, Bob Skelly.
Bob Skelly.
Will this be his first appearance in the House as leader?
Yes, it will be.
Is he likely to do the old Strachan or Barrett caper of the point of privilege and hold up the whole thing?
Well, because it is his first time in the House, I expect a little bit of righteous indignation from the man. In the past, the NDP has used tactics like saying, well, now that we're here, let's debate something really important like the economy in this province. Very likely we could see that sort of a motion being applied on the floor. They'll be ruled down immediately by the Speaker.
And of course, the bill will be passed today regardless?
Well, it's up to the NDP. As the government here likes to say, governments propose, the opposition opposes. If they want to keep it going all night or all weekend, that's up to the NDP.
Is there any chance that you will get the details of the bill, what's in it, before 10:30?
I think it's unlikely. I think the bill will actually be physically tabled in the House maybe 15 minutes after 10, 10:20. It's distributed to MLAs. It has to go to the clerk's office. Then the press gets a copy. It could be maybe 25 minutes after 10 when we finally get.
Well, if you can make it before 10:30, let us know. In any case, you'll have full coverage on the noon news.
Absolutely.
My thanks to Eli Sopow, BC TV man in Victoria. We'll see you later, or we'll see you on the noon news. Thanks, Eli.
Thanks, Jack.
Now, this morning we're going to turn and take a detailed look at the situation in Tranquille. I have my reservations about the actions on both sides of this particular controversy. It would seem that not all of the fragile inhabitants of Tranquille have yet gone to Glendale. But with me this morning is John Noble, Deputy Minister, Human Resources, who's prepared to answer my questions of details and fact on this morning's program. Now, as you know, the Pope is coming to town, and those with $100 to spare can help other people to get to the BC Place Stadium event. And here to give you the rundown on how that works is Ron Longstaff, who is in charge of the BC Place Stadium meeting with the Pope next week.
What we have planned is that we have 60,000 who can come free of the youth, elderly, and disabled, but we have 5,000 sponsors tickets which are being sold for $100 each, fully tax deductible, And what we're trying to achieve is that those 5,000, in effect, are allowing the other 60,000 to go free.
That's for next Tuesday, and you can get the tickets at the Vancouver Ticket Centre. But first, the Tranquille situation. I hope Mansky and the boys are watching. They were on the other day, and now it's John Noble's turn after the break. Sometimes if you glance casually only at the Tranquille confusion, you get the feeling that the totally helpless, sick, handicapped, mentally and physically individuals are being taken from Tranquille and dropped out in the street. That's one side you get. And the other side, of course, is just the reverse of the coin. Now, where does the truth lie in this Tranquille mess? I remember when BCMHP brought Nader up here years ago, and he gave us hell for not emptying all our institutions and putting everybody back in the community. And it was about that time, I think 1981, the government promised that the institutions would be closed by 1991. Is that correct, John Noble?
Yes, it is, Jack.
Before we do anything this morning, I'd like to get a head count of those in which institutions and who is moving. Now, nobody mentions Woodlands. How many people are in Woodlands?
I don't know the exact number, but it's in excess of 700, I believe.
More than 700 in Woodlands. Is there any prospect or plan for the immediate closing or scaling down of the principal institution for the mentally and physically handicapped?
We have our hands full with Tranquille right now, Jack.
So you've got 700 people in Woodlands, and they should have a staff of about 1,400, shouldn't they?
They have a staff of about 1,200.
1,200 people. So Woodlands is still a resource into which you can, if necessary, put badly physically, mentally handicapped people.
The percentage of the mentally handicapped in British Columbia remaining in institutions is approximately 5%. With the closure of Tranquille, that'll be reduced to about 4.5%.
And is that about normal for the country?
I don't know what it is in the rest of the country. I think it's quite low.
All right. Now let's go to Tranquille. Tranquille had how many patients in it before you began your community care plans?
325.
325. Now, and there's been a terrific fuss and kerfuffle about the 55. You are still in the process of moving to Glendale.
Right.
What is Glendale?
Glendale is it's an institution. It was opened in 1971, and it's an excellent facility. It's been evaluated and assessed as being a very good facility for people with exceptional needs. Mostly for mentally retarded.
Extended care, really?
Extended care plus.
For physically and mentally retarded?
That's right.
Now, how many patients are in Glendale? I'm sorry to be so elementary about this, but one gets so confused by the mismatch of information that's been garbaged around.
I think the capacity is approximately 300.
300 people. Now, did you have to move people out of Glendale? And
No.
if you did, where did you put them to make
No.
room for the people from Tranquille?
No. In fact, the reason we were able to use Glendale was simply that Glendale had a number of vacancies.
Had vacancies?
That's right.
Okay, now let's come to Tranquille, which seems to be the thorn.
There were 40 vacancies in Glendale.
At the time, when you began to make your move. Now, the government's pledge on Tranquille is that it will be closed by the end of 1984.
December 31st.
Closed.
Closed.
Shut down.
Right.
Gates locked.
Right.
Sold. Whatever.
Whatever.
Disposed of. Now, as of that decision to close it, there were how many people in Tranquille? 325, I see.
Right.
325. Now, the common impression is that only 55 being transferred to Glendale are all that's left in there. That's not right, is it?
Not correct at all.
Give me that score, because your commitment as a government is to move as many as you can into what you call community
Placements.
placements. We'll talk about them later. What have you achieved, therefore, with 325 and 55 going to Glendale, which brings you down to 270 more or less? What about these 270? Where are they now?
They're in either in the community or at Tranquille waiting to be placed in the community. We have developed most of the community placements in terms of the residential facilities and the community support services that are needed in advance of those people moving into the community. We had to do that first before they can move. We're not just going to dump people in the community.
Okay.
So the resources and the support services have been developed, and we're now in the stage of moving the people, the 263 actually.
Right.
I can explain the small numbers.
Never mind.
In the process of moving those in groups of 25, maybe 20, 30, and over the next 2 or 3 months, they'll all be moved into community placements.
Community placement homes, roughly speaking, where? All in the interior?
All over the province, no.
All over the province of BC?
We've tried to develop the community placement homes in the communities where these people come from.
You mean you cold-blooded, callous people in human resources have actually said, Mr. X, his father lives in Puscopay, we'll try and put him in a home at least close to Puscopay?
We've tried very hard to meet the expectations of the families as far as possible. There's a few whose expectations we've not met yet.
All right, I just want to get this clear though. So, Tranquille, you've got, how many are actually in community placement homes of your 260, 270?
Today's count, I believe it's somewhere between 25 and 30.
So you've still got more than 200 people in Tranquille waiting to go to the community placement homes.
That's right.
That's the physical situation. Have you botched it up though? Have you carelessly and rashly sent people to Glendale who shouldn't have gone there and who are perfectly capable of going into community resource homes?
That's been what we've been accused of, Jack. The individual cases have been assessed and then reassessed and then assessed again. The BCMHP, the society that represents the mentally handicapped, some of them anyway, asked us to review 22 cases. And a further reassessment was done of those 22 cases. Mm-hmm. And I understand of those 22, a further group of 8 or 9 have been assessed as eligible for extended care, which means that they will go to Glendale, but they'll be on the waiting list for placement in extended care facilities near their own communities.
So therefore, you're broadly in agreement, both sides, with the assessment of who can go into extended care and who can go into community homes?
No. The position taken by BCMHP is that all can go into community homes right now.
Do you believe that to be correct?
Well, I can only go by the professional advice that I've been given repeatedly on the matter, which is that there are 55 whose needs are such. And we're not just talking about one need, we're talking about a variety of needs.
You're
Jack.
talking about somebody who may have lain on their back for 30 years.
Yes.
Who has to be cared for in each and every simple physical want.
Each one is different, but there are some who have multiple seizures or spastic, atrophied muscles, have to be lifted, require assistance with toileting, feeding, and require 24-hour-a-day nursing care.
Anyway, you will have, by moving numbers to Glendale and the balance into community homes, will you be in a position to close Tranquille by the end of 1984?
Yes.
No doubt about it.
If there are no obstructions put in the way.
Well, there can't be any obstructions now because you're acting, are you not?
That's right.
Get down to cases with John Noble, Deputy Minister of Human Resources, after the break. I gather from you, John Noble, Deputy Minister of Human Resources, that there is no basic conflict between the government's actions and the BCMHP on the desirability of putting the right people in community homes.
That's right.
None whatsoever.
Not at all.
All right. Is this a government way of sleazing out on expense? Is it to save money?
No. The motives are being questioned constantly, Jack. Let me put it this way. Why would we place 263 people in community placements and Welsh on the remaining 55 if we didn't have really good reasons for doing so? We didn't have to initiate the closure of Tranquille.
In the first place,
in the first place. Tranquille could have continued for many years yet.
What's it going to cost you when you put the 260, 270 into community placement homes throughout the province? What's it going to cost you in a full year to care for these people with the additional community resource help and a budget? How much?
20 million.
How much it cost you to run Tranquille?
About the same.
No, you're not kidding me. It's not a cheese-paring thing. It's going to cost you as much to run them outside, to look after them outside, as to look after them inside.
Budget for Tranquille is approximately 16 million, and then you have to put the building costs on top of that, which is about another 5 million.
So it's
4 or
even
5
Steven
million.
as far as money is concerned.
As far as I can work it out on the figures available to me.
The only saving that the government would save in the long run, John, is that there would be fewer civil servants involved. Is that correct?
My understanding is that the government is trying to meet the expectations of the special interest group and is trying to do the best it possibly can for the handicapped people with safety.
In other words, the government has agreed they've got to go into community homes if they conceivably can. And the question of staffing at Tranquille is, of course, something that the BCMHP doesn't want. They want the whole place razed to the ground, don't they?
Right,
They also want woodlands razed to the ground, as I recall.
right.
Is that a practical possibility in the foreseeable future?
Not without a great deal of resources in
Well,
the way
now-
of additional funds.
How difficult, how many homes, you've got 263 people going into homes. Can you tell me how many actual profit and non-profit homes will be involved in that? If it's only 2 to a home, that's 130 places.
The majority are non-profit societies. I understand that there are a few proprietary homes, but I don't see that as a distinction in terms of the quality of the service.
But you're going to have more than 100 places to put these people into. You've got to have these right now.
That's right.
John, you and I go back a long way in the provincial government affairs under various governments, so we'll be non-political. I have a basic concern that while these homes may be set up in the best possible manner with the best possible motives, that you're going to run into trouble on standards, inspection, sickness, behavioral problem, a fire here and there. Are you not in some way risking the actual medical attention and care standards by putting them into all these variegated homes of different standards?
Well, you've touched on the point, Jack, that is the source of controversy right now. We're taking all this criticism because we're observing the Community Care Facilities Licensing Act requirements. You'll recall when it was called the Welfare Institutions Act, Jack, and you'll recall why it was introduced, because people like you raised hell about the conditions in some basements with elderly and handicapped people, overcrowded conditions and unsafe conditions.
Old men covered with scabies, dying in the ditch of drowning and all that kind of caper.
And that's why our research told us that before we placed the people in the community, we had to first build in the support services, and that's what we have done. And that's why moving the patients, moving the residents, is the last part of this whole exercise.
You see, the other thing I want to raise, and I raised this with Mansky, and I'll raise it with you. I go back to some other celebrated camps and things in British Columbia, and I remember being terribly concerned about the potential for rip-off and money. Now, I know this is the kind of thing we shouldn't talk about, but the government...
Why not? Why not?
Well, do we have any guarantee, really, that the money will be properly spent and the care properly given? Because I can see where you've got 3 or 4 people or 5 or 6 in a home, you're going to be paying that home anything from $200,000 to $300,000 a year for looking after half a dozen people. Am I correct?
That's right.
Is that not capable of... Now, I'm not casting aspersions. I'm merely expressing my concern about the odd thing which will develop. Do I have proper fears?
There's always potential for a problem in any system. Let me tell you what we've done to keep it to an absolute minimum. You'll remember the way it used to be, where groups or societies or whatever got grants from government to go and do their own thing.
Right.
Well, we phased that system out quite some time ago. And we have a system of purchase of service with contracts that are negotiated annually with the group, with regular monitoring and inspection. And if we're not satisfied with the service, we move the money elsewhere. We say, no, these are the people that we need to purchase service for. This is what we're prepared to pay for it. These are the standards we expect. Can you, Jack Webster, provide that? Yes, you can. Fine. We have a deal. And you provide the service, and as long as you're providing the standard of service that we expect, we'll continue to fund your operation. If you slip on those standards, we'll find somebody else to contract with.
But meanwhile, this is all predicated on the fact that you have a competent inspection staff and enough of them.
We have developed a monitoring system at the local level to deal with that problem.
You're confident that it will work, at least in the beginning stages?
That's right.
Because I remember it didn't work in other areas of private hospitals at one particular time. I'm sure you recall that too.
We have, most of the people in that business are not looking to rip the system off. They're in it. It's a very, very difficult business to be in. It's not an easy job.
Oh, I appreciate that.
So,
because these are the individuals whom the families cannot and really never could be expected to look after their own.
And it has a high cost because of the staffing requirements.
Yeah, but you take the staffing. Now, for instance, I know of one, I was learned the other day of one place where you've got 5 or 6 people. And it's looked after by 2 couples and 1 extra staff during the day. Is that enough? I mean, these people require 20, these patients, can I call them patients? Yeah.
20 call them residents.
Residents, 24-hour coverage. Is that enough for 24-hour coverage?
I think I know the home you're referring to, and I don't think that the figures were quite accurate. There's a couple there who live in, and they're all night, and additional staff are there 5 days a week. And that's appropriate to the level of care that the people require in that home. If we put people in that home who required a higher level of care, then there'd be a problem unless we provided additional funding.
So the die is now cast. When will you complete your transfer to Glendale?
This month.
This month. You would have had it completed before if it hadn't been for the blockade. No, you wouldn't?
No, we're proceeding with our original plans. We did not propose. It's a very complicated logistics problem to move people with those severe handicaps. And we had planned to move them in 2 groups. The first group has now been moved. We ended up having to move them in smaller groups instead of all at one go. And there'll be a second group that will move. And it involves moving special equipment, it involves moving staff, there's a lot of scheduling and...
What about staff for Glendale, though? Have you increased the staff at Glendale?
Yes.
And what about the fact that, what about the employees who will be replaced by the end of the year? Will many of them be working with patients they know in these community care homes?
Many of them will be.
And less of wages, of course.
Many of them, well, the wages vary. I mean, that's a matter between the society and their employees. Many of them are unionized. The Glendale situation, Jack, the staff who were working with the patients in Tranquille moved with them to Glendale so that they would have a continuity of treatment and they would have familiar faces around them. Some of those staff will be getting some of the jobs that are vacant at Glendale right now. There are about 30 positions, I believe, vacant at Glendale. Staff from Tranquille have been offered those positions and will probably move to Glendale.
More with John Noble, and we're going to take your telephone calls after the break. Something happened yesterday, John, I want to tell you about. I had a conversation with the North Shore Association for the Mentally Handicapped, and I have a copy of a letter written to Connie Clark. And the North Shore Association is surprised that the BC MHP would issue a blanket commitment on behalf of them and other local associations to accommodate all residents of Tranquille, irrespective of some of the very real problems. It goes on to say that they're having trouble to get the properly experienced staff for the 9 patients that they're going to take. They also attack them for being counterproductive on their media events while they're still having trouble with community resources. And the North Shore says to Connie Clark, "We cannot support your recent actions in staging media events and initiating court cases." So the BC MHP isn't quite solid. I thought I'd bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
Now, I want to show you a little bit of film which came from Prince Rupert, I won't use the girl's name, who was to go into this home on which, can you see the monitor, John?
Yes.
$22,500 has been expended on alterations. You can see the wider doors, and you'll see the very broad bathroom door in just a moment or two. And the case was made to me at Mansky of the BCHP, you can see the spacious area there, that because a girl who has been flat on her back, 50 years of age, on a stretcher for many years, has gone to Glendale, that these alterations and this money will be wasted. Is that your view of that?
Not at all, Jack. We need all the placements that we can get. The money was actually spent on 2 homes in Prince George, and we had 2 individuals that were originally considered appropriate for those homes. One of them is a child and has gone into a child care resource, and the other, the lady that you mentioned, is an intelligent, articulate person who is very severely handicapped physically, and she is waitlisted for an extended care bed in her own facility. The reassessment team...
She wasn't due to go into that place?
Originally, it was felt that it would be appropriate for her to go there. The reassessment determined that she was extended care eligible, and she's on the waiting list for extended care in her own community. In
community home. So that 22.5 hasn't... how many people would have been in that house anyway? Not just the one?
No, it probably would have been for 4 people, I would think.
4 people, you would think. Okay. Let's go to the phones. Go ahead to John Noble.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
I've just retired.
Well, spare the history and ask a question.
Okay, I have a couple of questions here. The first one is this. We take these handicapped people away from Tranquille. We bring them down into the community. I've been watching this with some degree of interest, and I see people complaining that here in Surrey, that their children or whatever they are being taken from Tranquille and going to be put over to Glendale. They want them in their own community. In fact, what I see them saying is this: I don't want them in my house, but I'd like to take the neighbor to take them.
Well, you're being a little bit cruel there, but what do you say to that, Mr. Noble?
One more thing here. I have been associated with some of this, and some of these people that do take them in for a little while, get fed up, and move them on to some other place. And I think that if you put them in community homes, these poor people are going to be moved around in some cases, not all cases, batted around like ping pong balls. And I think they'd be far better off to be in one place with the faces they recognize and really competent people handling them.
Okay, Mr. Noble.
I can't comment on the first question, Jack. I don't want to get into those kinds of descriptions. It's true that sometimes acceptance in the community is difficult. And so far, I'm sure that there are families that are looking after their mentally handicapped relatives. The people that we're involved with are not. And the debate is...
You are their family.
They're not asking us to allow these people to go home to them. They're asking us to provide care for them.
You've agreed with the BCMHP that the proper and most desirable case in almost everyone is in a community resource home in the family's neighborhood, if at all possible.
If it's possible, with safety. You can do a heart transplant in your backyard, Jack, if you want. But is it safe?
Have you managed to match a number of the patients with the family's requests?
Yes, we have. We've met most of the expectations. We have had 11 positive responses from families where they felt that the care at Tranquille was very good, and they're satisfied that there will be just as good care in Glendale. We have, with all the family contacts we've had, and of course in some cases there's no family contact at all. We are the only family they have. But we're down to 5 dissatisfied families. I'm very concerned about that. Now, of the 5, 2 are waitlisted for extended care in their own community. Their concern is that the relative has to be in the waiting list in Glendale, ready to move to their community. Of the remaining 3, 1 is closer with the move to his family than he was in Tranquille, because the family's from the Lower Mainland, and visiting in Glendale will be easier for them than it was to get to Kamloops. Of the 2 remaining, 1, I'm hopeful that the physiotherapy and the development program at Glendale will help this individual to become ambulant. He'll be able to walk, which will mean that he will then be able to meet the Community Facilities Act regulations, and the time will come, hopefully, when that person can move into an extended care facility in his own community. It remains at the moment that I have one that I haven't found a solution for yet.
One out of the Glendale transfers for whom you've not been able to reach a solution yet.
That's right.
So for the moment, Glendale.
Glendale.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Mr. Noble and myself have spoken in the past, and this problem that we're having here is we're having across Canada. It's a social problem. The Pope said that a measure of a civilization is to look at how we look after the people that cannot look after themselves. Now, in Manitoba, for example, they've had an NDP government.
I would just assume that you kept to a question in this situation. I don't want to discuss either the Pope or the NDP in Manitoba. I'm trying to deal with
this is an important problem here, okay? And what I'm interested in, I see the problem with Tranquille. I'm wondering to what extent, for example, the way we're handling this is going to be handled with autistic children. There's a number of autistic children that become autistic adults that come to their parents who are older people, and their older parents have to look after autistic adults, for example.
Okay, autistic children.
Yes, when they reach the age of 19, we have a serious problem. In many ways, it's often difficult to distinguish between the severely mentally handicapped person and an autistic person. And at the moment, we don't have a good solution for the autistic person. We've provided programs for the autistic children, and we're currently concerned about that issue, and we're looking at that in terms of the future for the 19-year-old and up who are unable to be placed in a community placement.
Is that a separate, measurable problem of its own, the autistic one?
Very difficult, very difficult. You pick your expert and you get a different assessment. The symptoms tend to be very similar, but it relates more to, it's described as a learning problem.
Anyway, we're not dealing with that this morning, but thanks for your call, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have a number of points I'd like to hear Mr. Noble respond to.
All right, sir, if it's a number of points, would you be good enough to hold on? I promise to take you the first call after the break.
Okay.
Thank you. After. Go ahead to John Noble, Deputy Minister, Human Resources, dealing with the Tranquille affair.
Good day. I'd like to ask you a number of questions. The first one concerns the professionals who have been giving you advice in this regard. I have also heard that and talked to many of these, many other professionals myself, and have noticed across North America that deinstitutionalization is happening very quickly, and most professionals in the modern world believe that these people can and indeed should be cared for in their communities where their families are closer, where there are more volunteers who can help them in their programs. And I would like to know which professionals it is that you are hearing from about this. Now, just before I let you answer that, I would also like to make a point about the safety factors, which seems to be the thing that you throw up most often as the reason why you would prefer to keep these people in institutions.
You haven't said that.
And I think that the question of safety in institutions and the quality of care there has been what is in question, not the care and the safety in the community. I have been on the wards of some of the buildings that you're talking about, and I know the staffing levels there, and there's no way during an emergency that the staff at those institutions could get people out of there. And the staffing levels in community homes are much greater, and they would...
All right, the 3 points there right now. 1, professional advice. 2, safety factors in community care homes, lack of safety factors in Tranquille. I've got to summarize just that, or you'll go on forever.
We put together an advisory committee, a team of professionals who have been in this field for years, doctors, nurses, social workers, and it's their advice that we've been listening to. Now, pick your expert is a classic problem. You get one expert to say one thing and another expert to say another, especially when an issue is as sensitive as this one. What they've told us is that there are 55 people that have needs that do not allow them to fit the requirements of the Community Care Facilities Licensing Act, which is there to protect people if we place them in the community. We're closing the institutions. I mean, you know, I don't want to go on debating the quality of the institutions when we're in the process of closing them. There are people who need to be lifted. Now, it's true that there are some people in community placements who are in wheelchairs some of the time, but when push comes to shove, they can get up and move themselves enough to get out of the building. And we've looked at the safety requirements in the institutions. We've made special arrangements in response to parents' concerns in Woodlands with safety exits and procedures and staff training and everything else to try and cover that as far as we possibly can.
Just let me clear up this medically fragile.
I don't see the argument, Jack, that we should take them out of one unsafe position and put them in another unsafe position, which is what the call is saying.
If I am a patient in Tranquille and I'm multiple handicapped, and I cannot move by myself from a wheelchair to another position, I have to be lifted, does that mean I must go into extended care by and large?
That's one out of several criteria. We have A to F.
Give me them, if
right.
you can shorten them.
The variables include medical information, history, medications, treatments, special procedures, allergies, and diet. Mental health, comprehension, memory, self-direction, reality orientation, and emotional stability. Communication, vision, hearing, speech, and understanding. Daily activities, ambulation, that means walking around. Transfer, bathing, dressing, grooming, hygiene, eating, and bladder and bowel control. Housing and social contact, current type, appropriateness and relationships, plus supportive relationships. Self-care, food preparation, traveling, medications, and treatment. Each one of those, you can't take any one of those out of context. They're all considered when looking at an individual.
And you will have the odd patient who brings a negative response for each one of these qualifications.
We have people who choke on their food unless they're assisted with every spoonful. We're people who have no bowel or bladder control, Jack. People who have atrophy of the muscles and can't move themselves more than a few inches at a time, just to rock back and forth. We have people who have no speech at all, can't communicate, and are just extremely handicapped individuals.
You know, I agree with your philosophy. Deinstitutionalization is a great thing, but I'm concerned that maybe you've moved moving too many too quickly.
In the Ministry of Human Resources, we prefer to be damned for doing than damned for not doing, but that's always a choice we have.
Providing the patients don't suffer.
Our concern always is for the safety and well-being of the patients. That's the bottom line, Jack, and everything we're doing right now.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I would like to ask Mr. Noble if we could demonstrate to him that we already have individuals who are as handicapped as the ones that are going to Tranquille, living in facilities, government-supported facilities. If we could take him and show him individuals of the same handicaps and of the same capacities, would he then reconsider individual cases?
We've given a great deal of reconsideration to individual cases, as I've explained already this morning, Jack. We've considered and we've reconsidered. We're in support of the regulations under the Community Care Facilities Act, which are there for the protection of the individuals. We're placing 260-odd people in the community in very short order. We have a time frame that takes us to 1991, and nothing is fixed in our business. We're always willing to change as circumstances change. If there are some of those individuals that are going to Glendale, that over the next few years it becomes apparent to us, with the best advice we can get, that they are appropriate for a community placement,
We'll move them.
We'll move them.
Ma'am, are you a parent?
No, I'm not, but I've been one of the developers on behalf of one of the parents.
Yeah, but what was that community living society we had here? Is it still here?
Yes, it is.
Didn't they take people from Woodlands and
That's
bring them
right.
out to community? And aren't they supported by the government?
They 100%.
What we are developing on the same model, and we must fit, Jack, into what they call B2 licensing, which is institutional care licensing, and we must have medical staff in order to get our license. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is that we have even more who are ambulatory, who are far more, and I would consider far more medically fragile, if you use the term fragile, with as many and
It's not
greater
a good
medical
description.
needs
No.
as the two individuals that I've been involved in.
All right, are you planning to open a home? Is that your problem?
We are opening 4 homes, and I'm very supportive and have been of the government, and I cannot understand their arbitrary way of assessment. The one young man can
Just a minute,
transfer.
ma'am. Just a minute. Just
Jack,
a minute.
the-
Arbitrary assessment.
The 260-odd people that we're moving into the community are very handicapped people. We're not just I mean, the day of having what's called a trainable mentally retarded person in institutions is long gone. The people remaining in institutions, we've been in this for a long time, Jack.
But let me ask you
We've been moving
question.
people out of the institutions for years now.
I know you have, and I've often kind of thought you were going too fast. How many homes do you want to open, miss?
Our society is opening 4 homes.
Which society is that?
North Okanagan Community Living Society.
Can't you get enough from the system at the moment without the reassessments of those in Glendale?
We developed our budget that around one young man whose mother who's been working very closely. We had a registered nurse in place, a house that could be fit to meet all his needs with a special ed teacher and a day program available.
And you complaining because you were refused or something?
We just want the opportunity to show that we can provide a much better quality of service in one of our homes than what he's already
I admire your perspicacity, but you're going to have to deal with John Noble and his officials on your plant, your staff, and your patients. And if they fit the standards, they'll get patients.
You can create a mini hospital in the community for one person, Jack.
You could create an acute
care. You can create an acute care hospital for one person if you want to.
You mean a mini hospital in every block?
The question is it advisable?
I doubt it. Anyway, oh, she's gone. She's dealing with you, presumably, anyway. I don't quite understand that attitude. After the break.
We're working very cooperatively.
Yeah, that woman, I finally understood it. She was from the North Okanagan Society, and they're preparing plans to...
Yeah, we're working with them. And we're placing,
you'll give them the money.
Residents with them, and
we'll
we'll give them all the money.
But as you say, you're not anxious for a mini acute care hospital in each block.
Well, I mean, that doesn't seem to be where we're at right now, anyway.
Go ahead to John Noble.
Thank you. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I've been observing this Tranquille move, and I am finding it very, very upsetting in the hysteria shown by the families. Now, these families want care for their members. They're getting the care. They're being moved to a better location where they're going to be closer to medical attention, better medical attention. They're in a nicer climate by far. If they really love these patients and they can't look after them or don't want to look after them at home, why the furor? Can you answer that for me, please?
Well, it's not a fair one to put to John because the motives of the parents are, in the main, I would say, totally impeccable. And don't forget, you've never suffered from the incredible family strain of a seriously handicapped child in your family. John and I remember days, perhaps even me better than John, 25 years ago when we had to put pressure on the government to get the dreadfully retarded individuals into institutions. You recall that, John?
Yes, indeed.
And so times have changed much for the better since then, but I would not want to knock in any way, shape or form the motives or the reactions of those who have to deal and live with this dreadful problem.
But I would like to respond to the caller, Jack, by saying that we're very concerned about the anxiety that's been generated among the families by the kind of information that's been going out on this issue to the public.
By the hysteria, you might say.
It's been generated.
Well, I made it perfectly clear to it, Mansky and Company, that I thought this business of blocking the transfer was not the right thing to do.
Well, we've been in touch with families who have been made very anxious by it, and we've had to put a lot of time in helping them to understand what we're doing.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack. I'd like to ask your friend, Mr. Noble, a question. If they are sincere in sending 262 community homes, wouldn't it be advisable for them to move the 260 first to show their sincerity in moving those people to community homes, and then think about moving the balance of the 55 to the other Glendale home?
Not a bad point.
Make the people a little bit...
I can explain it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's see what John Noble says to that.
Closing a major institution is a huge logistical problem. We have the building, we have all the services, we have a whole variety of staff that have to be considered. And the moves have to be made in a staged sequence. Before we can make the moves of the people going to the community, we had to develop the community resources and the support services. And that's what we've been putting a lot of effort into. We have a vacant space in Glendale. We can make that move now, and because we can make that move now, it's appropriate to make that move now, and that will assist us with the closure of Tranquille. And then we can get on with all the other things. Keeping those people in Glendale, in Tranquille, until the last minute
But you are definitely going to put them in community homes, right? That's not just a cover-up to get some of them started over to Glendale and then maybe move some more on to Glendale afterwards.
Well, our motives are always being questioned, Jack. All I can say to that type of a question is wait and see.
Okay, boy, but you're saying that to close the hospital in an orderly fashion with support in the hospital for those there.
That's right.
It was advantageous to use the space at Glendale and get the others by the end of the year out of Tranquille into the
You can't just let the institution deteriorate to the point where it's bad for the residents.
Agreed. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah.
Mr. Noble, I have two brief questions for you. One concerning the philosophy of the whole idea of normalization for the mentally handicapped, and the second concerning the government's funding practices to carry out such normalization practices. I don't know if you know it or not, are aware of the fact that about 10 years ago, the state of California went through a similar process, similar to ours. I have before me just a few excerpts from an editorial from a California-based nonprofit society for the mentally handicapped, which I feel are really apropos to our situation, and I'd like to read them and then ask you to respond. Briefly, it says, the handicapped, who's responsible? Are they? How do we get into the mess we're in? And it goes, up until about 10 years ago, the main place retarded and autistic people went if they couldn't stay at home was a state hospital. The state hospital had many drawbacks. There wasn't much privacy, opportunities for growth and learning.
Yeah, we know that.
Back in 1973, we were hearing figures in the range of $2,000 per patient per month. Adjusted for inflation, you can see that they were very expensive indeed. Combine this with the late 60s, early 70s atmosphere of social consciousness in which people began to look closely at what went on in the state hospitals.
What's the conclusion of it?
Really, let's see. I'm going to try to make this brief. As a philosophical justification for the emptying of the state hospitals, the state adopted the policy of normalization developed by Dr. Wolfensberg of Nebraska. The philosophy is, in a nutshell, that all efforts should be made to help handicapped people.
We're all agreed in that. Do the handicapped associations object to what has been done, or do they approve it? Do they object or do they approve?
I think there's some concern about the people who are carrying out the normalization practices at the level.
Gosh, you speak such clumsy English. I expressed those concerns a long while ago that the standards of care in community homes, unless they're very closely monitored, might turn out to be unsatisfactory in some cases.
Okay.
Okay. Must be an American. He's so convoluted.
Do you want me to answer that one, Jack?
No, I don't. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Yeah.
I'm directing this question straight to Mr. Noble and get everything out of the way. And you said it takes $20 million to keep Tranquille open, and the same for other homes and institutions. Like, why the bother, emotional stress, and working hours to transfer and relocate these patients? These people might take time to cope with their transfer and their new society. You're just causing another problem to yourselves, patients, and other families, as well as the different communities.
Do you mean the Glendale move or the closing of Tranquille?
Closing of Tranquille and us also.
Both of them. He says you're just causing a lot of problems for yourself and your family by your policies.
We're certainly causing a lot of problems for ourselves, Jack. They're just taking nothing but flack over it. But all our research and all the pressure from the special interest groups have persuaded government that this is the right way to go. And we're going as far as we can at the present time.
In other words, you are doing, in fact, what the BCMHP wants.
Right. Absolutely.
And your disagreement is in question of detail.
They want us to go all the way now.
Well, I hope you don't. Go ahead from Victoria.
Hello. Before Tranquille closed, there was an 18-month wait for long-term care placements for the handicapped at Glendale. There were no vacancies, as Mr. Noble had said earlier.
I didn't say that.
Glendale. Rather, there was additional funding provided to Glendale to open more beds.
No.
Is there now a longer wait list for handicapped persons, not now within the long-term care system?
There were vacancies at Glendale. I'm sorry to have to correct you on that point. Secondly, there is a waiting list for extended care. If there weren't, we would be moving people straight from Tranquille into those extended care beds. It's precisely because there is a waiting list of up to 18 months that we're providing care for these people in Glendale, where they can be best looked after until they can be moved to those extended care beds.
You've lost me there, John. You had vacancies at Glendale.
That's right.
For what kind of patients?
For this kind of patient.
For this kind of patient. Is there another category of extended care waiting list patient who is handicapped but not a Tranquille case? Are they the ones that are in the 18-month waiting list?
There are probably a number of people on the 18-month waiting list for extended care for facilities around the province. Whether they get in or not will depend on the individual facility that they're designated for. If they're designated for a facility in Kamloops because that's where the family is, then That may take a little longer. There may be a vacancy appear in Castlegar or somewhere in the meantime, but we want to wait until they can be in the facility nearest their own home.
Did you get an answer?
I think so. I've received contradictory information from his staff who look after the assessments at Glendale.
Well, we were reducing numbers in Tranquille, Woodlands, and Glendale over the last 10 years. And that's one reason why that there are vacancies in Glendale.
Because you now need the capacity at Glendale to close Tranquille.
If you think about it in concentric circles, Jack, with Glendale at the middle, because Glendale is the most recent facility, Tranquille was the oldest, Tranquille's the first to go. We'll start working over the next few years on Woodlands. The most handicapped people, we will reserve Glendale for that purpose. And then someday, perhaps, we can go the whole way, but it's not possible right now.
Well, John, that helped a lot this morning, I'll tell you. But the public is going to have to keep a very close eye on what happens in the communities.
I agree.
To the patients, because we haven't even mentioned behavioural problems. I know one case where you had to put somebody back into Tranquille from a community home because behavioural problem, which is a violent action, I believe.
That's right. Well, one of the services that Woodlands and Glendale will be able to continue to provide for some time is that kind of respite care, where somebody has an episode and they have to be moved back to a more highly staffed situation.
And you'll have to be very careful of the analysis of people you put in community care homes with others.
I don't expect that it'll be any easier, Jack, than running the institutions was.
My thanks to John Noble, Deputy Minister of Human Resources. I'll be back about the Pope's visit after the break.
Thanks.
Next Tuesday at 1:45 p.m. precisely, if everything stays to schedule, His Holiness the Pope will land at Vancouver Airport for an 18-hour visit, but packed with events. And here to give us a lineup this morning are three men deeply involved with the visit of the Pope, which will produce greater crowds and greater audiences than ever seen in Western Canada before. With me is Ron Longstaff, who's the man in charge of the 65,000 people function at the BC Stadium. Also with me is Ben MacDonald, who is perhaps best described as the managing director of the Papal Visit. And also here to supply any shortcomings I may have in religious philosophy and knowledge is Father Bill Mendenhall, who is the director of the Office of Religious Education for the Archdiocese of Vancouver. Now, I'm going to start with you, Ron, right off the top. When is the function at the stadium? Precisely when?
The function at the stadium starts, our program starts at 6:45 p.m., and we expect the Pope to arrive shortly after 8 p.m. It is not a prayer meeting. It is not a mass. It's what we're calling a celebration of life, primarily aimed for the elderly, the disabled, and the youth.
How many people will be there? 65,000?
65,000 plus another 2,500 performers, so it'll probably be the largest crowd ever assembled in the new BC Stadium.
What kind of performers? You mean the old cultural thing?
Oh, we have about 2,000 ethnic and youth dancers. We have an 800-voice choir from the Catholic schools. We have the entire Vancouver Symphony Orchestra. And we have 3,200 youths in the stands doing 3 flashcard presentations during the performance.
Now, the Pope has a scheduled, he'll be there all the time, but does he have a scheduled speech? How long?
Yes, he does. He has a scheduled speech. We don't know how long.
Let me switch to Father Mendenhall. Does the Pope keep the schedules when he's speaking, or is he liable to give you a 5-minute sermon in 20 minutes?
Well, he usually has a prepared text, but sometimes he'll depart from that and give some kind of impromptu speech. Oftentimes, as I've noticed, especially in youth rallies, and there'll be a lot of youth at BC Place, if depending, the length of the speech depends on the response he gets from the crowd, and oftentimes it's interrupted.
I want to finish now with Ron on this segment of the program. 65,000. Do you have to pay to get in?
No. Well, some people we'd like to pay. What we have planned is that we have 60,000 who can come free of the youth, elderly, and disabled, but we have 5,000 sponsors tickets, which are being sold for $100 each, fully tax deductible, And what we're trying to achieve is that those 5,000, in effect, are allowing the other 60,000 to go free.
They're carrying the tab for the full 65,000.
They are.
Now, for old age pensioners, you say seniors and handicapped, how the devil are you going to discriminate from the ordinary people who want to go too? Because not everybody's going to go to the other functions.
That is correct.
How are you going to select your audience among 65,000 people trying to get into the stadium?
We've tried to do that as fairly as possible. It is an ecumenical event, so people of all faiths are welcome. We have distributed tickets through Catholic parishes, through the Vancouver school system, through old folks' homes, through institutes that look after disabled people, and the whole network out there have had an allocation of tickets. The only limitation we have is in the number of wheelchairs. All the wheelchair tickets are gone, but anyone who is elderly or disabled, particularly if they're of the Catholic faith, should have no difficulty in being able to get a ticket for BC Place. Most of the tickets are already gone.
What time do the doors open at the stadium on Tuesday?
The doors will open at 5 p.m.
And people will start queuing up at 1 p.m.
I wouldn't be surprised. Certainly the elderly tend to come right on time.
Are you still selling $100 tickets?
We still are, and they are available from the Vancouver Ticket Center. The phone number is 280-4444. The one other thing, if I may suggest, for those coming to BC Place, they should take into account the extraordinary traffic we will have downtown on that day, and they should lay their plans to come early and, if possible, to park 6 or 8 blocks away and make a bit of a pilgrimage so they don't get tied up in any traffic jam.
It wasn't too bad the last time the stadium was almost full.
But this time we have a motorcade coming down Burrard where traffic will be blocked off. The traffic in front of the Holy Rosary Cathedral on Dunsmuir will be blocked off. So you've got an unusual situation from, say, a Grey Cup game.
We get the point. Now to Ben MacDonald, Managing Director. Take me from the time he arrives at the airport, and what does he do and where does he go?
Well, Jackie arrives at the airport from Vancouver Airport from Fort Simpson at 1:45 and transfers, along with his entourage, into a group of helicopters and leaves Vancouver Airport at 2 o'clock, arriving at Abbotsford Airport at 2:45, where there will be the formal red carpet reception with the Lieutenant Governor, the Premier, and the local mayors.
This is where the Mass is going to be held.
The Mass at Abbotsford Airport, which is in the municipality of Matsqui. It's not in Abbotsford.
Oh.
Just wanted to mention that.
You just confused me, that's all you did. I know where Abbotsford Airport is. I don't know where Matsqui is.
I promised the mayor of Matsqui I'd make that point.
Oh. Now, okay. How many people?
Don't know. We have facilities there that will handle 400,000 or 500,000, but actually I'm expecting somewhere less than 200,000 people.
Fewer than 200,000?
Yes.
Oh, you'll get more than that. I mean, this isn't something that's dependent on the weather in any way, shape, or form, is it?
Well, it's just a guess, Jack. I've never done anything like this before. We've never had an event like this in British Columbia before. We don't really have that large a population. It's a work day, you know.
Are you going to attempt to route people in and out of Abbotsford on any special highways, or is it catch as catch can?
No, we've had all the king's horses and all the king's men working on a transportation plan. And I'm very pleased with it. It results in having some 12 lanes of traffic funneling into the airport, and the airport can suck up the traffic like a sponge.
You're going to have to block off the access to the airport at some certain time during that day. In other words, you're going to have to close the roads, I believe, about 1 hour before and 1 hour after, and of course during the Mass, no traffic allowed in. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
That's not correct?
That's not correct.
People will get there by steam, by car, by horse, or by donkey, or by foot.
And by bicycle.
And by bicycle. Now,
and we can park 65,000 vehicles on the site. That's a large parking area.
Now, will this be a formal Roman Catholic full Mass?
Yes. Yes.
And of course, it's still an economical occasion, and anyone can go to it.
That's right, anyone can go to it. But it will be what's known as a pontifical high Mass. In other words, a high Mass celebrated by...
Is this one of the places where... Oh, no. Do you expect the Pope to develop his theme of human rights and aid to the underprivileged in any special way in British Columbia?
I don't know what he's going to speak on exactly in British Columbia. The theme is the mystery of God revealed in the person of Jesus Christ, but I imagine whatever points he addresses to human rights, it'll be consistent with his entire philosophy, which is to make sure that that whatever policies a government pursues or any group within a society, that individual human dignity is protected.
More with my Papal Committee after the break. Once the Pope gets to Abbotsford, there'll be a control of air traffic in that area. Nobody in the light planes should attempt to fly around to take pictures, should they?
That's correct. The airspace is closed, Jack, for an hour before his arrival and some 20 minutes after his departure.
Now, he leaves Abbotsford at what time?
He leaves Abbotsford at 5:45.
Right.
Again by helicopter, and arrives at Vanier Park at 6:30. Vanier Park is on the south, if you will, the west side of the Broad Street Bridge.
Is that where the procession starts?
That's correct, the motorcade.
And then the motorcade goes from Vanier Park, roughly speaking, don't give me the route, to where?
It goes across the Broad Street Bridge, down Broad Street to Georgia. And it goes to the Holy Rosary Cathedral, where he takes an hour's rest in the residence at the cathedral.
I should think he's entitled to an hour's rest by this time. Yeah, that's in Archbishop Carney's residence.
That's correct.
At Holy Rosary. Then off to the BC Place at what time?
He goes to the BC Place he arrives in BC Place at 8:15.
And he finishes when? When's he finish?
An hour later.
9:20.
About 9:20.
If it all goes to schedule. But
now, I watched the Pope yesterday. I watched the Pope in Quebec, and I watched him waiting interminably at Windsor Station in Montreal. He's liable to be a little bit behind schedule, is he not, Father Mendenhall?
Yeah, and as I pointed out, one example is the youth rally that he had at Cardiff in 1982, for instance, when every other line was punctuated by moans or cheers or whatever else, when he said, "As I leave to return to Rome today," and everybody went, "Oh!" I mean, that kind of thing obviously is going to lengthen the...
It's kind of difficult, even with these fairly tough security men around him, to say, "Come on, hurry up, Pope," isn't it?
Well, he likes people, and people like him, so that slows things down.
Fair enough. Now, when does he leave Vancouver? Spends the night with the Archbishop?
Yes, he's spending the night at the residence at the Holy Rosary Cathedral, where he'll dine with the bishops of British Columbia, and then he leaves the next morning from Vancouver Airport at 7:45.
All right, let me get the public appearances just clear for those people who can't read big schedules like me. Vancouver Airport, there'll be a crowd there.
No.
What do you mean no?
When he arrives at Vancouver Airport, there's no crowd. It's not open to the public. He just changes from fixed-wing aircraft to helicopter.
So there's no point in going out to the airport to see him?
That's correct.
You're trying to discourage people from going to the airport to see him. Is that right, Father?
No, I don't think they're trying to. They just...
He's
going to hop from a plane to a helicopter, so just to expedite things, they're moving right along.
Abbotsford Air Force in the afternoon, big Abbotsford Airport for the big mass. Right?
And there he travels through the crowd on his way to the altar, back and forth through the congregation.
Yeah, then out to Vanier Park.
Correct.
Downtown Broad Street, the Holy Rosary Cathedral.
Correct.
Stadium, 7:45.
Right.
That'll be the streets lined from 7:45 on, then back again after that, stays the night with the Archbishop, and then crowds on the streets go out to the airport the next morning. Am I correct?
That's correct, Jim.
Now, has he made any socially significant statements that, up to now, which you were unexpected?
Not that were significantly unexpected, no. The speech that he gave to the Inuit yesterday, for instance, encourages them to take the means to protect their cultural integrity, but he wasn't promoting the liberation of an Inuit
Just
state.
for a moment, I thought he was going to say "Vive la Inuit Libre." But maybe he shouldn't, but you know.
But as I say, everything he has said so far in his speech about faith and culture at Laval, in his address at the Institute with the handicapped yesterday regarding the sanctity of human life, and his speech to the native groups is consistent with his respect for.
In other words, John Paul II's philosophy seems to be on the right of the spectrum. Would that be a correct definition?
No, I would say the spectrum is respect for the unique dignity of every human being.
But we don't expect any explosive statements about birth control or changes in the priesthood or anything like that.
No, his line will remain consistent on the priesthood and religious life. His reaffirmation of the Church's teaching on birth control will remain the same.
Good. Well, my thanks to you, Father Mendenhall. My thanks to you, Uncle Ben. Ben MacDonald, Managing Director of the Pope's Visit, and to the peripatetic Longstaff, who seems to be involved in everything important in British Columbia. I'll be back after the break. The House in Victoria has just got to this precise state where the Minister of Labour, Bob McClellan, has introduced a bill called, in its own curious way, the Metro Transit Bargaining Assistance Act. And as I understand it, an adjournment has been called for 1 hour in the House to enable the members to read and digest the bill before the debate continues. So shortly we shall be hearing what the provisions are in the bill. It was quite funny this morning, the NDP got up this morning and introduced, which you can do, it's a dreadful time-wasting procedure in the legislature, introducing the special guests in the legislature. And of course the special guests, I think it was Robin Blanco, introduced Kelly and Krantz and a number of other people from the ICTU, and of course the Solidarity Coalition, the SWAT group of old age pensioners, and all the people on that side of the spectrum. This, by the way, is the first day that Graham Lee, former NDPer, sits in the House as an independent. Remember how Graham quit the NDP after they lost the leadership and is sitting in the House, and of course McGeer was up on his feet right away, reminding Lee that all good independents like himself and Gardner won't turn to social credit. There's not much activity outside the legislature at the moment. There are a few protesters outside, and we're hopeful that we get some of the details of the bill at the earliest possible moment as soon as our line is open to Victoria. In the meantime, however, and I'll cut into it if I have to, I'm going to show you a little sidelight to the Transit Commission, because this neophyte union, the ICTU, is liable to get raided forthwith. Here's Schneider on a sidebar.
Jack, regardless of what happens to Joe Morris's recommendations to end the bus strike, if the people upstairs here have their way, it certainly will not be the end to the problems for ICTU, the Independent Canadian Transit Union. Upstairs is a raiding committee room. The Amalgamated Transit Union, the people who used to represent the 2,600 bus drivers, are trying to get their certification back. And if they get their way, as soon as the bus drivers hit the street, they will begin raiding. Let's go upstairs and see what Wes Hutton, who's in charge of this, has in mind. Hi, is Wes in? Hi, Wes.
The only thing I can say is, we can't make a report. I can't give a statement until the raid begins, actually.
When does that going to happen?
Would be after the contract is settled.
After the contract is settled. I see you got your machine running here. Do you mind if I take a look at that? Come on. You do?
Yeah, sorry. That's notice is due to go to the members, and I don't want it shown on TV.
Okay, well,
under any circumstances.
But I take it that you're gearing up to be raiding right now, just as soon as the collective agreement is signed.
Yes.
And you're all ready. The Xerox machine is just cranking stuff out?
Well, we've been, the members have been coming to us and complaining for to myself, actually.
Now, let me understand.
I was a former officer.
You lost the certification about 2.5 years ago, is that right?
That's right, January 1982.
By 16 votes?
That's right.
So you don't have much ground to regain.
That's right. And, you know...
16 votes out of 2,600 members right now.
At that time, I believe there was 2,727 members as of the vote day. Then there's only about 26 now, 100.
And what's your indication of how well you think you're going to do?
Oh, I fully believe we're going to win.
You're going to win?
Oh, definitely.
Because
I wouldn't be doing this. The members have indicated to me that they want us to raid. They want to go back to ATU.
So ICTU, Independent Canadian Transit Union, has blown it with this 13-week strike.
Definitely. And their handling of the situations that have come up previous, they're non-democratic.
So tell me, where was their fundamental mistake? How do you think you could have done it better?
Well, you see, there is ways of doing things and there's ways of not doing things. For example, the ATU has always sat down and negotiated on a continuous basis until we come to an agreement.
You're more gentlemanly, it sounds like.
That's basically it, yes.
You get along better with management.
Well, we try to get along.
And you don't want to have fights?
We have disagreements, definitely. That is the trade union system. You know, you react to
Tell me, did you ever
happens.
have a 13-week strike ever in your history when
Never.
you had? Never.
Never.
So you lay the fault of this long strike, almost 100 days now, squarely at the feet of ICTU.
I do, yes.
And you think your members, most of the members who used to be your members, will now flock back to ATU?
I believe definitely. In the moment that they find out the truth and what has happened and the way this was orchestrated, that yes, they will come back.
So now you've got this office set up, you got your machine going here. You're just waiting in the bushes right now just for your first opportunity to raid.
We're waiting until the time is right.
So, back after the break. Well, the Metro Transit Bargaining Assistance Act has now been introduced and read for the first time in the legislature of Victoria, and on the face of it, it seems to be fairly straightforward. As a matter of fact, Eli Sopow, if you can hear me, Eli, look into the camera and say something. It may well be that it's only on the terms of the last contract. Eli, go ahead.
Hello, Jack. I think I hear you now.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Show my face.
Okay, what it is, Jack, let me catch my breath here a bit. What it is that what we've got... 30 seconds. Just keep talking. What we've got...
Yes, carry on.
There's a settlement. What they are asking for is the buses have to roll within 72 hours. Both sides have to reach an agreement on their own. There's no time limit when they could reach that agreement. But if they don't do it on their own, then the government will impose a settlement. So it's very much like the pulp dispute.
Okay,
Both
Eli,
parties
thank
have
you
to
very
work out
much.
the
In other
process
words,
of collective
the buses under the terms of this legislation will have to roll within 72 hours, and if there's no amicable settlement, it'll be forced on them by the legislation. Full details in the noon news. And I'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. precisely. The Tranquille crisis again on check at midnight. When in doubt, mumble with Webster at 9 a.m. precisely.